It's been 2 weeks and counting. And if you thought the Democrats would tone down their vicious race baiting, guess again. It all started earlier this month when President Trump tweeted about the city of Baltimore's downfall. The left pounced, claiming Trump was a racist, despite what residents told our guest last week.
How do you feel about the president's comments?
Me personally, I want him to say things like that because it's true.
What do you think about the coverage? What do you think about what's being said?
It's sad, but it's true.
I mean, he has a point because crime is very high, and something has to be done.
After the 2 recent mass shootings in El Paso and Dayton, Democrats and the liberal media went into overdrive trying to tie the Trump administration to the tragedies, and they didn't stop over the weekend.
We have a president with a toxic tongue who has publicly and unapologetically embraced the political strategy of hate, racism, and division.
He's a racist. That's always been in the background.
He's encouraging not just racism, but the violence that follows.
The person who is in the White House is someone who seems to have racist sentiment.
Joining me to respond is South Carolina Senator Tim Scott. I had the pleasure of serving with Senator Scott in the United States Congress when he was back in the House of Representatives. Senator, appreciate you joining me here tonight. When you hear that montage, and then you hear you also see the residents that were actually there in Baltimore, what runs through your mind? What's your perspective?
Well, there's no doubt that President Trump is not a racist, and the facts are very simple, that the same folks that voted for me voted for President Trump because President Trump made promises to the voters and he's keeping the promises. So without any question, if you look at his legacy, it will be his accomplishments in office, frankly, helping in many, many ways African Americans. Think about the fact that we've all heard about how low the African American unemployment is, the lowest recorded in the history of the country. But more importantly, a racist would never talk about criminal justice reform and how the benefits disproportionately help African American men. President Trump signed that legislation into law. You would never hear a racist talk about opportunity zones and how he came on board full throttle because he wanted to help poor, disadvantaged communities. Most of them are consistently African American and Hispanic communities. You would not ever hear a racist. Never would you hear a racist talk about providing more research authority and more resources towards sickle cell anemia, a disease that impacts disproportionately African Americans in this country, and yet President Trump signed that legislation. What you do smell, not hear, but smell, is fear. What you smell is fear on the left. They have been consistently using the race card every single time there's a presidential run. You'll hear John McCain, racist. Mitt Romney, racist. Ronald Reagan, racist. George Bush, racist. W, racist. Why do they continue to find that narrative? Because they understand that the lowest common denominator in politics is fear and division. President Trump has been able to deliver policies that have promoted, encouraged, and inspired growth in the African American community economically in a way that no president has done in the last 40 years. Well, this president is not a racist.
And Senator, this is my concern, that every time the liberals get into trouble, that's what they yell, racist, racist, racist.
Yes.
Listen to what Donald Trump had to say on this topic.
I think it shows how desperate the Democrats are. For them to throw out the race word again, racist, 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 that's all they use to anybody. They call Nancy Pelosi a racist. She's not a racist. They call anybody a racist when they run out of cards.
Is the president right on that? That's what they do when they run out of cards and don't want to talk about policy?
I think it speaks once again to that lowest common denominator. And look, if you were running on the left, would you run on the Green New Deal? Would you run on the 70% new income tax? Would you run on a 4% wealth tax? Would you run on a financial transaction tax? No. What else would you run on? Well, you would run on some tired narrative that the president, because he's a Republican, has to be somehow a racist. It is inconsistent with reality. It's a different dimension that I don't understand. And frankly, the more you use the concept of racism, the more we grow ism fatigue in this country. And that is a terrible place for us to be. And so the greatest threat by overusing racism is that when there is an actual challenge, you've cried wolf in the wilderness.
Now,
there was too many.
There was this is horrific, and I'm almost embarrassed to show it to you, but there was a radio show host out of Missouri, or in Kentucky, a Kentucky Republican, Daniel Cameron, running for Attorney General. And if you look at this quote here, it says, "My suggestion to Mr. Cameron is to stop eating the coon flakes the White House is serving." It's almost embarrassing that this person would do this. There's been no backlash. I really haven't heard of the Democrats going after them.
Crickets.
But very quickly here, I want to get your reaction to that when you see that.
Well, Jason, a couple things. Number one, President Trump has endorsed the African-American Republican candidate for Attorney General in Kentucky, Daniel Cameron. Two, you've not heard a single Democrat presidential candidate speak out, not even an iota, against these absolute vile comments about Daniel Cameron. And three, we're going to consistently prove why Trump voters voted for me in South Carolina, Daniel Cameron in the Republican primary in Kentucky, Marco Rubio in Florida, and thank God that the Democrats' campaign platform leads to a huge victory in 2020. I won't say congratulations yet. I don't want to jinx it, but we're getting really close. Thank God the Democrats have nothing else to run on. But they're
and up in Michigan, Mr. James, who's also running for the Senate there.
John James.
Exactly.
Wesley Hunt in Houston. It's
now,
a lot
Senator,
of African Americans running for office this time.